Matt, let's go. We're going to hop over to, your favorite thing. You got us on the show reading comics all the time. And there was a lot we read this year. You had to put together a list for us because we were just so blinded by what we did. But we're going to go the same order. Janelle Wheeler, who, if you guys never know and you're getting to the show, we pulled in Janelle Wheeler and made her do a bunch of geek stuff. Some of it she may have wanted to do. We're not sure. We never really checked. But we made her start reading a lot more comics just as a control to see how it would affect somebody who hasn't jumped in this to before. And she's been swimming like a shark. So, Janelle, this is your most successful comic year yet. What were your highlights? Your top 3? Hit us with it.
Okay, I'm going to start with this. Please know that I have been trying to play catch up for a very long time. I started reading comics vigorously since 2020. So I've been reading past books as well as, current releases. So this was very difficult for me to remember what I read. I probably left off so many, but I just had to go with the ones that just grabbed me right off the bat. So my number 3 is Death of Doctor Strange, because it's Doctor Strange.
Very
guys.
nice.
How can we not? This is my first mint comic book that I own. And it's always going to be very near and dear to my heart because of that. It is Strange. If you don't know, Strange is my favorite Marvel character. I love seeing the different sides to Strange. I felt like the villains were actually scary. Like the 3 mothers were really scary. Clea is someone that I was not very familiar with. So when they introduced her in the MCU, oops, sorry, spoilers if you didn't watch end credits. I was so pumped to see. And so getting that taste of her in any comic books whatsoever is really exciting for me because I want to get to know this character before I see her in the MCU. And yeah, it was great. And I loved all the supporting characters. And I love this. I'm going really fast now because I'm freaking out. from what we just did, I was like, okay, I gotta be fast.
No, you're fine.
But yeah, love this book. And also that cover art. Are you kidding me? I would frame that in my house. Okay. My number 2 pick, cannot wait to do this, is Captain Marvel.
Yes!
Yay! Okay, I was so excited for this reaction from Matt.
Feel free to be quicker if you want to.
Good time.
Okay. This is a topic of discussion that I just got into on Twitter. Someone said the worst MCU or the worst Marvel character was Captain America. And I bounced back and I said, no, the worst character is Captain Marvel in the MCU, but I love her in the comics. So Captain Marvel has kind of taken my heart. And we have read a lot. So this is probably why I love it so much. Matt has kept me on task with every time there's a release, we're reading it. At least he and I are. So I love it. It's so fun. It's the same way that I chose She-Hulk for TV shows. That's how I feel Captain Marvel is with my comic picks. It's fun. It makes me feel good. I'm smiling the whole time I'm reading it. It's easy to read and understand what's going on. And I love the cameos. And just as a whole, I have a blast reading it. I'm never what the heck is going on? I'm never lost in translation. It's never too wordy. It's always beautiful. It's always pretty. So loved Captain Marvel.
So happy, man.
Heck yeah. And my number 1 pick, this is going to be another moment, I can't wait, is Terminator.
Yes!
Wow.
I cannot believe that I chose an X-Men book as my favorite. I'm so confused. I'm just as confused as you guys are. But this was my first real, adult comic that we kept reading. So issue to issue, I've seen the whole thing play out. This one, I feel like all my hard work of getting through X-Men comics paid off. Because I understood everybody. It was awesome to follow. I've had a few community members calling me Dazzler for years. for actual years, and I never went in and like tried to figure out who the heck that was or like what she was about. And now I'm just like, oh my God, it's like gem of the X-Men. And Dazzler's my boo thing. I love her. And
that wasn't all she was.
yeah. And it's just it's like it's a feeling, like you have to read it to understand, like you have to experience it to understand it, because you will not understand what's going on just by looking at the cover, and you will not understand just by us telling you how great it is. You have to do it for yourself. And it's so funny and fun and adult and just up my alley, and a complete departure from all of the other things we read this year. So those are my picks.
Great list.
Thanks.
What a great list. That's a fantastic.
Yay!
I'm glad you and Matt collaborated on that list. Love the collab. I will do my top 3 comic book picks of the year. I will say before I get into it, I fought long and hard, but if not for the hiatus that kind of threw things off beat, I would have had Nice House on the Lake. Which is really up there with my favorites. But that hiatus this year threw it off. It's released. I got lost. The story kind of started to fade. It was a mess to get back into. So let's keep that schedule consistent, because that would have been easily on my list.
It makes a difference. I have one that is exactly like that I didn't put on here for that. Yep.
So my actual number 3, and I kind of sent these to Peter in a bundle because mine are kind of bundled. I kind of flubbed this a little bit. But I don't know how they broke it down, so let's just try this. But my number 3 and my number 2 are Chip Zdarsky's Batman stuff. So let's see what we had as number 3 here. I believe this is Batman the Knight.
Yep.
So Batman the Knight, I really only had top 2 because the Zdarsky stuff is tied. His regular Batman run, spoiler, which is coming up next, and Batman the Knight, this kind of limited series that he did. This was the year of Chip Zdarsky for me.
Yeah, it was.
He completely, Batman, we say how sick we are of Batman, how much Batman, Joker, all that Batman universe stuff that we have to do because DC's always pumping it out. Even this year, just with like spin-offs of Catwoman, Batman, the Jock Batman series, Bat and Cat, that whole thing, the Tom King series that went, all that stuff. But Zdarsky really, and we have had James Tynion IV doing all kinds of Batman, Joker, Commissioner Gordon stuff. But Zdarsky is a voice that has stood out from the crowd more so than just about any Batman creator I've seen in recent years on the comic book page. Batman the Knight is the best telling of Bruce Wayne's training to be Batman origin story I've ever read. Hands down, it's going to be one of the most fantastic graphic novels we have of Batman stories. It's going to be right up there with some of the classics in a few years, I think. And it gave not just depth to Bruce. And it wasn't about Batman. It was about Bruce Wayne and all these things he learned. It introduced this whole new world, whole new lineup of characters who are familiar and rooted in Batman lore, but we got to really examine and know in new ways. Crazy teachers that can like mess with your mind and explain so much of how Batman's able to do what he does and almost be this supernatural presence. Yep. And we got a backdoor origin story with Ghostmaker in there too by the end, culminating in one of the most exciting kind of finale issues that brought in Ra's al Ghul, Talia, and that whole history. And it was just fantastic. And just like I said, Chip Zdarsky is a master of taking all these messy pieces of Batman lore that have been sprinkled from different creative teams, pulling them together and saying, how can we make this more cohesive and exciting? And he nailed it in Batman the Knight. The other thing was Zdarsky's Batman failsafe story arc run, which is in the most recent Batman comics. Batman failsafe is an entire story that you would think is crazy conceptually, that somebody goes back to Tower of Babel and says, you know what? I didn't like, there's some things hanging over at the end of Tower of Babel. How can we make this much more exciting? And we got this crazy story of Batman, the thing that people have been Googling. It's one of the top Google searches for Batman. What's Batman's plan to stop Batman? Yeah. One of the biggest geek discussion topics you can have, besides how to kill Superman or beat Superman, who can beat Superman, is like, how do you stop Batman? And so we got a story where Batman built a robot, the ultimate robot, to stop Batman. But not only does he do this using Tower of Babel, right off the end of Tower of Babel, when Superman comes to him and says, you almost got us killed. Like, what about you, buddy? And he's like, I got plans. And we got the Batman of Zen-Ra, who got that crazy Grant Morrison alternate personality that's now fit back into the franchise, makes so much more sense and actually has something to do and is actually like an antagonist in the Batman universe that's interesting.
Yep.
And yeah, that story, which just wrapped up this week, so maybe some recency bias, but Failsafe, I mean, it was dark, it was brutal, it was exciting, edge of your seat stuff, and again, built off so much Batman lore and so deeply rooted in intricate little details of the character, like the Alfred thing.
Yep.
That like hits you in the heart, like, oh, Alfred was the guy who always stopped this crazy doomsday robot from starting, but he's dead now, so here we are.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did not know with that Penguin faking his death beginning thing that was so like weird and comic booky that this is where we're going, but Chip Zdarsky is making Batman more relevant and exciting to me than he has been in years. And just quickly to sum it up, because I just talked a lot and gushed about Batman, I combined them together, but my number one pick for the year, and I don't think I did this in the right order. I think I just threw them out there because I think Batman is actually my number one, and this was my number three, but that's on me. But my other pick, let's just say, of the year for my top comic books was the X Lives and X Deaths of Wolverine.
Okay.
So early that
it was so early that I forgot until I saw Matt's list, and then I was like, "Oh, holy crap!" I went back and was like, "No, yeah." Just like Batman, and Zdarsky did for Batman, this series did for Wolverine some stuff, and helping us. It both straightened out some things with Wolverine and his relationship to the X-Men and Charles Xavier, but also helped pull together some of this mess from the Dawn of X, House of X stuff into one of the most exciting things we've seen since House of X and Powers of 10, as a dual series dealing with two different sides of something that come together by the end. And boy, did they pull this thing together by the end. I mean, it's so exciting. You have Wolverine jumping in body through time on this assassination for Terminator style to fight Omega Red. Red more relevant than we've had him in years. Absolutely. And then you have a Wolverine, Phalanx Wolverine from the future coming back, trying to kill people. And more heroes have wrapped up. And it was just, X-Men lore can get really kind of crazy lately, but this was one of the best Wolverine series I've read in a long time. Artwork was gorgeous. It did time travel well. Straightened out. It stuck the landing. And yeah, it was good. So I think that was my number three. I think Failsafe was my number two. And I think Batman the Knight was my number one. But, you know, here's the presentation. So that were my top three.
And and X Lives also, it's amazing that it did it while also doing X Deaths.
Yeah.
It two series to intertwine like that and then stick the landing is incredibly impressive. Yeah. It's confusing. All right. So for me, this was hard. There was a lot of good comics, and like not even just like that list alone. Like there's stuff that didn't make the list that like I absolutely adored. So this was hard. But number three is Boom Studios' Once and Future. This series ended. This year was the final 30th issue. It ended this kind of sprawling, epic Arthurian legend story of what if King Arthur, you know, people always talk about the myths and stuff, and what if King Arthur came back, but he was not the King Arthur that you always see in the books and stuff, and it was this darker Arthur, and the legends were twisted on their head, but then there's other kings, and it tackled how you believe in stories and myths, and if you believe in them too much, do they kind of overtake you and you don't recognize the real world? And then it did stuff, brought in Robin Hood and Beowulf and all these classic characters of legend, and then surrounded it with a story that is about a like super spy grandma and her son, who is like this legacy, and then also his girlfriend. And it was really about those three in the middle of this epic sprawling thing. It was hilarious. Gran is one of my favorite comic characters, like period now. She's amazing. And there's just so much fun in this book. It really took some big swings. Dan Moore's artwork is beautiful throughout. He's one of my favorite artists, and this book is a testament to why. Kieran Gillen did such a wonderful job of bringing all these huge concepts together into something that someone can really digest, but you learn things as you reread them. So ended on a wonderful note. It is almost all in trade now. I could not recommend this more. Please go read this. I hope for maybe a sequel down the road, but it's also one that if it was just this, I'd be okay. It was a wonderful book. So definitely that. Number two, I won't go on a ton because Kofi said it so eloquently. Batman the Knight was number two. And this was one that made the list because not just because it was good, because it was excellent, and what he said about finding these small little nuggets of things that haven't been explored and then bringing them and fleshing them out and adding a whole new character to the mix, because like Ghostmaker wasn't ever part of those original plans, right? Like no one was thinking of that when they wrote stories that tackled Ra's and stuff. So for them to add all that and make an origin story, Batman's origin is one of the most overdone things in, I will not even just say comics, this is like superhero media. Like everyone knows what that is. So when this was first announced, it was like, oh, we're doing that again. And then to come away from it, it's just like, no, I want a series of this. I want a, I want a hardcover. I want a movie. It was so well done. And I think that was actually what put it as number 2 on my list, because it was just the ambitiousness of it and the skill in which it was pulled off, I thought lifted it even higher. It's a great story. There are other stories that were also kind of equally great, but just the technical ability to pull this off and do it so well, I think kind of puts Batman the Night in that next spot for me.
You're real classy not to also point out that I ate Major Crow on this one, just like Stranger Things. Came away from this.
Oh, that's right. I didn't remember that.
Oh,
for my number 1, it's probably not a surprise to anybody. No comic in comics encaptured things I love into one book like Do a Power Bomb.
I didn't even know. I just knew.
That was this book is just phenomenal, man. It takes wrestling and pairs it with this heartbreaking story about loss and grief, and also kind of healing a bond between a father and a daughter, and it wraps all that up in this supernatural based tournament of wrestling. And also Daniel Warren Johnson, you can feel like when a book conveys the enthusiasm of its creator, you can feel it. You get a sense that this person is fully invested and they're just putting everything they have into the page. And Warren Johnson's enthusiasm for wrestling, something he says was rekindled before he was writing this, and as he was writing this, you can tell it's every move is just feels like if you were watching a wrestling match. And I watch a lot of wrestling, right? Even outside of just covering it for us. So it was magical. This is a stunning book. It ended. I mean, this book, just not to go into like crazy spoilers, but like this book ends up with a wrestling match that involves God. just to put that in perspective. And yet it never felt like it wasn't just a story about people dealing with the loss of their mom and of their wife. So like it was just so wonderful. It's so great. Some excellent books this year, but this one took the cake for me. It is done. It was finite. 1 of 7. So you're probably going to be able to pick it up and trade, next month or the month after. But I would definitely recommend it. So that was my list.
All right, and those were our top comics of 2022. As we all said, it was a great year in comics. It was great to read. It was great to experience so many things. And we had so many that we literally had to have a list because we couldn't remember like all the awesome things we had done, just the vague sense that we had them.